The events of the past couple of months have changed the world for today and into the foreseeable future. Since March of 2020, over 30 million people have filed for unemployment, and numerous small, medium, and even large businesses have filed bankruptcy, and many of them have closed their doors for good. In addition, companies have realized the benefits of working remotely and rural office space, and now the entire dynamic of needing to live within city limits has changed entirely. As a direct result of these significant changes, the rental market will likely become much cooler in areas where that has not been the case in over a decade. And as a landlord who has never encountered such a dramatic shift in the rental market, it is important to learn new skill sets to help be prepared for that shift and master the skills needed to rent out your rental properties quickly and efficiently. In today's podcast, we'll explore what is known as 4 of the impulse factors that you can implement today to compete in a cooler rental market, which in turn will increase your occupancy and reduce vacancy. Stay tuned, and we'll get started in just a minute. Hi everybody, my name is Chris, and I want to thank you for joining us for another value-packed TenantCloud podcast. If you want to be a more informed, better educated, and successful landlord, then stay tuned. With over a decade of property management experience, we bring you short and sweet, bite-sized pieces of incredibly valuable property management tidbits in 15 minutes or less. In the rental industry, when you speak with a potential tenant, every interaction is typically a selling moment. Whether it's the first impression during your first conversation, the curb appeal of the rental, or the cleanliness of your rental property, you are constantly selling. And that's true whether you like it or not. One person is always buying, one person is always selling. And if you aren't a good seller, but the landlord down the street is a great seller, chances are you could be holding on to a vacancy for a lot longer than you are comfortable with. So the question is, how do I become a great salesperson? So today, in today's podcast, we're going to discuss the 4 impulse factors that, there's more than 4, but these 4 impulse factors are typically used to help people make purchasing decisions and to make decisions quicker than what they normally would otherwise. And we won't go into the psychological factors behind these impulse factors, but I definitely encourage you to research them on your own time. It's absolutely an interesting topic to research. The psychological things in motion in a person's mind that push them into making buying decisions every single day. And these are impulse factors that marketers and advertisers use and salespeople use. They're all around you every day, and you'll probably start to realize them as we go through them, how you personally have even made purchasing decisions based on these impulse factors, whether you knew it at the time or not. But needless to say, these impulse factors do help you become a better salesperson, but only if you take the time to learn how to use them correctly. So this is just a brief overview of them, but I definitely recommend that you take the time to research and look into these and learn how to implement them and learn how to be able to use them better and efficiently. So without further ado, we try to keep these podcasts under 15 minutes. We're not always successful at that, but usually if we go over 15 minutes, that's because there's a lot of content that is extremely important, and but we know that you are not trying to spend your entire day listening to a podcast either, so we try to get through this as quickly as possible. So without further ado, the first impulse factor that we'll discuss is the fear of loss. For example, it could be something like when you were touring with an applicant, or when they call you and are asking if you have time to tour your rental. You could say, yeah, I had 5 rentals available in this area as of Monday of this week, but by Wednesday, I was down to just 2. So they're definitely renting out quickly. When is the best time for you to tour? That simple statement is simply letting somebody know that you had X number of rentals available just a few days ago, and now you're down to just 2. And so immediately there's this sense of fear of loss, like, wow, I really like the pictures, I really like the location, and you're telling me that you rented out 3 in 3 days? That's insane. And so, again, I'm not telling you, definitely not telling you to lie. This is just an example. If you don't have 5 rentals and you didn't rent out 3, then you don't want to use that as a fear of loss. But that is just an example. Let's say you did have 5 rentals and you did lease out 3. Then you would want to tell people that. It's fear of loss is just letting people know the state of things. And so in this case, it could be that you had 5 rentals, you leased out 3, and now you're only down to 2. And you want to make sure that the person is aware of that. Why? Because it creates a fear of loss. And it's a good thing because chances are if you leased out 3 units in 3 days, then you will probably lease out the other 2 in the next 2 days. And so, but it helps you to do it even faster by actually telling people what's going on and letting them know that, no, this actually could lease in the next 2 days. And so people are afraid of missing out. You've heard the phrase over the past several months, I'm sure, because for some reason it became a cultural phenomenon, particularly in the teenage and young college age demographic. But the phrase fear of missing out, FOMO, I'm not sure why it became, I haven't looked into it, why it became popular with those demographics, but it's a term in sales that's been used to refer to fear of loss or fear of missing out for longer than I've been alive. It's absolutely nothing new. It's just predominantly been in the business and sales and marketing and advertising worlds. And the fact that it surfaced in general pop culture was very strange to me over the past several months. Again, I haven't researched why it surfaced. I just found that it very interesting that it did. But needless to say, the fear of loss or fear of missing out, FOMO, is a very real thing, and it's an impulse factor that is a powerful tool to be able to use when you are running a rental business. The second impulse factor is a sense of urgency. Now, there's a slight difference between the sense of urgency, impulse factor, and the fear of loss. They're often used in combination with each other, and they typically both have a similar impact on the person making the purchase. In the same example given above that we just talked, or a few seconds ago that we just discussed about creating a fear of loss where you said you had 5 rentals, you leased out 3, and now you're down to 2 by Wednesday, you could also mention that, again, only if this is true, that you toured 5 potential tenants in the past 24 hours, and 3 of those people had requested a link to the application. This creates a sense of urgency because now the person not only knows that, wow, you're leasing these out at an incredible pace, but you've also toured 5 other people who now have a head start on me in the past 24 hours. And so time is of the essence if I want this rental property. I cannot procrastinate and take my time. This creates a sense of urgency. Now, there's another way that you can create a sense of urgency that looks a little bit less like fear of loss, and that is using what's called look and lease specials. I am sure that you have heard of them. You've probably even made rental decisions based on them, because a lot of rental properties and landlords and property management companies use this tactic to get people to make a decision right then and there. So typically when somebody walks in the door and they say, hey, I'd like to tour a rental property, where they call you up and say, hey, I'd like to tour this house. And you say, yeah, sure, great, let's go ahead and tour. And they tour that day. You tell them at the end of the tour, typically, we have a look and lease special. Now, this could come up at any time in the conversation, but usually it's used as an impulse factor, and you want to use the element of surprise in the sense that you toured, they love the property, you've already figured out that they love the property, they've indicated that the entire tour. They haven't been very indifferent about it. They've been very forward about the fact that they love it. They love the location. They love the price. But you know what? They need to talk to so-and-so. Usually that's the number one reason people give for not making a decision right then and there is, oh, I need to sleep on it, or I need to talk to so-and-so about it, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. And so you already know they love it. They want it. But now it's just getting them to make a decision and not allowing them to walk away with not leasing and seeing a property down the street or in another town or even neighborhood that they love even more than your rental property. You want them to lease your property and commit to your property and stop looking that day. So how do you do that? Well, you use a look and lease special. This is just one of the ways, but it's pretty effective, and that's why it's used very often. A look and lease special is where it's only available that day at the moment at which they are touring. So You love the place. It's great. It's an awesome location. The price is good for you. And guess what? We're offering a look and lease special today. And what a look and lease special is that we are waiving your application fee if you apply before the end of business today. And it's only good for today because you toured today. And so I'd love to give you an application or send you an invitation to our application. What's your email address? And I'll send that over to you right now. And you can actually apply on your phone right now, or I even have a tablet if you want to apply, or on my laptop, or whatever it is. And literally you're trying to get them to make the decision right then and there based on this incentive. Now, look and lease specials take on a ton of different variations. Back in the day, I say back in the day, it's not really that far back, but about a decade ago, somewhere around the 2008-2010 timeframe before the rental market heated up again, there were a lot of look and lease specials that looked like free 32 or 350-inch TVs, or free tablets, or free iPads, or free iPhones. And those were incentives that they gave people if they rented that day. Now, they had to get approved, but the idea was apply today, get approved today, move in tomorrow, essentially. And it created that sense of urgency because it's only good for today. So you can't wait, you can't sleep on it, you can't talk to so-and-so, you need to apply today. And so my wife and I actually made one of our first renting decisions together based on a look and lease special. And it actually turned out great. We loved the property. I actually ended up working at that rental community. It was actually one of the largest rental communities I've ever worked at. It was over 700 units. It was a small town. But yeah, the look and lease special worked on me. It was a sense of urgency, and it worked on me even though I knew it was a sense of urgency because I'd already been in sales and marketing for a significant period of time prior to that. And so I knew it, I saw it, I heard it, and it still worked on me because it is what it is. People make decisions based on things that they don't want to miss out on, and they make decisions based on a time frame that they're given to make a decision to purchase something. You've seen it on websites where there's countdown timers on when a promotion ends, or the sales ending that day. You go into a store, sales are ending that day. Those are all sense of urgency impulse factors. They're getting you to think in your mind, I can only take advantage of this thing today. So if I'm going to buy it, I have to buy it today. And it's the same with rentals. Enough on that one. We're going to move on to the third impulse factor, and that is the Jones effect. Now, this one may be a little bit more difficult to implement unless you have a lot of rentals at a single property. But the Jones effect is essentially putting people at ease by letting them know how much other people enjoy your rental property and how happy they were that they rented there. This is typically something that you would see in the form of reviews online. And in a Forbes article recently, a research study was cited from 2016 that showed that 85% of people who responded to the survey stated that they would trust online reviews more or at least equal to a personal recommendation from someone they know and trust. That is huge. And that is the power of the Jones effect. The Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses, that's where it comes from. Where you see the person down the street buys a new car, or they do something to their yard, or they put new trees in or new plants in. Everybody wants to keep up with everybody else. Everybody wants what other people have and what other people like and what looks good with or on other people. And so the fact that other people like your rental property, other people like you as a landlord, those things are part of the Jones effect. It puts people at ease. It makes people feel comfortable with someone that they don't know, but because other people know you and other people have had experiences with you that are positive, and they went and talked about those positive experiences, well, now they're okay and they're comfortable with you as well. And you've developed that instant relationship, that instant rapport with those people through the Jones effect. So an example of how to implement this would be to have, and it doesn't have to be necessarily even reviews on that specific property. It could be reviews on you as the landlord. Airbnb does a really good job of this, where they have reviews on the host themselves. Regardless of which property you're looking at necessarily, you can look at reviews of the host themselves, and people often comment about the host, not necessarily the property. And even if the property wasn't the Class A experience that people were expecting, if the host was great, the review is typically still positive and typically still mentions that the host was great. And that can overcome a lot of objections or obstacles or things that the people didn't necessarily like about the rental itself, if the host themselves were amazing. And so the Jones effect is extremely powerful. Highly recommend that you figure out ways to implement that into your sales experience for your rentals. The fourth and final impulse factor that we'll discuss is indifference. Now, indifference is an interesting one because it's the idea that you should never appear desperate for a sale. And nobody really likes a desperate salesperson. If you go to buy a car or any product ever, if they're pushy or salesy or they just appear desperate for a sale, it's hard to make a buying decision as a buyer. You tend to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and people tend to read into that negatively and will avoid making a purchase from you. So indifference is literally the idea that it doesn't matter to you if they sign a lease with you or not. And that's not in an arrogant or off-putting way, but more of a casual, nonchalant, I understand you have a lot of options and a lot of people are interested, so if it's not a good fit for you, no hard feelings. I'm going to lease this property whether you are the tenant or not kind of way. But not so much in a verbal upfront way. It's typically more expressing it through body language, tone of voice kind of thing. And it takes a little bit of work to master indifference, but some people are just naturally indifferent about everything. And so that it comes easy for a lot of people, but for others, it's not. And it's hard to invest a lot of time with somebody and tour somebody. And I know a lot of property managers and landlords can get frustrated with the number of people touring and people aren't applying for whatever reason, and investing that time and effort and energy and gas and all that stuff. And then to have the person walk away, that can kind of wear on you, and to the point where you can come across as if you are desperate for that rental. You are desperate for that application. And you may not be, but it can come across that way if it's expressed that way through your body language or through your tone of voice and your personal frustration in the experience of renting out a property. And so it's important to reel that in and have control over that and maintain indifference in all your interactions with people so that you don't come across as pushy or salesy or any of those things. So those are the 4 impulse factors. Again, I highly recommend. We didn't really go into a lot of the psychology behind these things. There's plenty of research on that. I am not a psychologist, but there is plenty of research on it out there that you can find online to read all about it. And it's definitely a good read if that's the type of thing that interests you. But nonetheless, these 4 impulse factors absolutely work. I have used them for well over a decade now in different businesses, not just in the rental industry. But it is absolutely applicable and can be used in the rental industry and should be used. And not just in your interactions, it can be used in your marketing, in your writing, on your property, in your reviews and the way that you structure them on your website, and encouraging people to leave reviews, to leave positive reviews. All of those things should be done in different aspects of your business to create these impulse factors, not just in your 1 or 2 or 3 interactions with your tenants, but all the time, everywhere that your property can be seen and your business can be seen, these impulse factors should be implemented. And I definitely encourage you to take the time to research, learn, and implement them in your business. As always, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that you are a very, very busy person, so I appreciate that you take the time to listen to this TenantCloud podcast. And I hope that you have found value in the time that you've spent listening to it. So feel free to share this episode with any friends, colleagues, or family members who you believe may benefit from the information we've discussed. You can also read our blogs at tenantcloud.com/blog, or listen to this podcast on any platform such as Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or even the TenantCloud YouTube channel, where you'll also find full system demos, webinars, and other media content that we create. Thank you again for listening, and we'll look forward to talking with you next time.